Hello everybody, welcome back to my channel. This is Seeking Alexandria. I'm Paige, and if you are new here, hi, welcome. It's good to have you. As I'm sure you've guessed by the title of this video, today's video is going to be a little different. I was thinking the other day, you guys know how every time I think, something bad usually comes out of that. So, sorry, my hair, by the way, is just like a hot mess, and it's driving me insane. I got out of the shower, and I was like, no, I don't wanna. I don't want to deal with you today, so I'm just gonna not. My makeup clearly went the same route, so today's just a very casual day. Anyways, I was thinking the other day about how I wanted my channel, from the very beginning, I've always wanted my channel to be a little bit different. I've always wanted my channel to be something that was more encompassing than just makeup. I feel like there are so many people out there in social media and on YouTube and everywhere that, you know, they talk about makeup. Makeup is a thing. Everyone's reviewing it. Everyone has their own opinion on what's great, what's not, all that. And I love, you know, tossing my opinion into the ring and kind of letting people have it, you know, whether it matters or not. That's always cool. But I've always kind of thought that from the very beginning of my channel, it was never just about makeup for me. It was never something that was just about one facet of my life, which I enjoy makeup. Am I like a professional? No. Am I that great at it? Honestly, no, not really. If you could see like my face up close, you'd be like, oh girl, hot mess express, choot choot coming through. But that's part of the reason that I don't want that to be the focal point of my channel. I don't put all of my emphasis as to who I am and what my channel is about. It's not curated on makeup. Wow, could I hit a couple more things on my vanity, please? Oi. And I also like to think too that like if I was, you know, an actual beauty YouTuber, that I would actually remember to charge my camera battery so that I'm not constantly recording on my phone. Lucky for me, the iPhones have continuously come out with great pixelation, so that's nice. I was thinking the other day about a series that I wanted to start for you guys, and if you've read the title, you already know what it's called. I have decided to title it The Fat Kid Chronicles, and it is going to be about my life and my weight loss and my weight gain and just my weight journey throughout my life. I have had such an odd like experience and affiliation with weight as I've grown up, and it's something that I thought a lot of people could really relate to, and something that younger kids could listen to or watch and, you know, take something from, something that people my age could take something from, and something that, you know, adults and people with children could take something from. You know, I feel like as we all watch different things, we all draw different, you know, conclusions and different processes and thoughts, and I just thought it would be cool to kind of showcase my life in that aspect as the times go on. I have another series that I'm going to be starting here soon, so be on the lookout for that. But without kind of any further ado, this has already been way longer of an intro than what I needed it to be. I'm gonna hop into this. Today's Fat Kid Chronicles, and just so you guys know, like I actually have went down and like I've been writing stuff, like I have pages written that are like dedicated to this, like dedicated. Because I don't want to miss the things that I feel that were intrinsic to my weight loss, my thought process on my weight and all that. And I don't want to leave anything out, or, you know, without it being 3 hours long, I don't want to leave the important stuff out. So if I'm constantly looking down, I am kind of referencing to make sure that I stay like relatively on topic. Tangents, I have bunny trails. There's a lot of them. They run around my brain. Okay, so the first thing I wanted to kind of start with is that when I was a kid, and this first video, I should probably say this first video is going to be like my childhood, like K through about 8, like through the end of middle school. There was that much in just that area that I was like, okay, high school's got to be separate and so on and so forth. So this first video is going to This first video is going to mainly focus on grades like K through 8, you know, a little before school started, that kind of thing. So I kind of wanted to start off by saying, like, when I was younger, I was definitely like a more active child, and not like active, like let's go play sports, because I have the coordination of a guppy, but more like I was always outside. I loved to be out playing. We lived on like 10 acres when I was a kid, like when I was young. We lived on like 10 acres, and I loved to go out into the fields. I loved to go pick flowers and like learn about flowers and that kind of thing. I was so into that. I would grab a notepad, and I could barely write. Like my handwriting was only a step below what it is right now. And I would love to like grab a pad of paper, and I'd go outside and I would just write things. Like I would sit in a tree and I would write what I thought was like poetry or like stories. I was known when I was a kid for like writing reports. One of my most famous reports, it was about cats. I wrote a whole report on cats, like on a Friday night. That was what I did for fun. So it was that kind of theme, that kind of, my outdoor life wasn't like I was so active that I was running track and field as a kid, but it wasn't like I sat inside and like played games all day. That wasn't really an option in my house. My mom was like, go outside and get the stink off you. Go, go, go. So, you know, I loved like gardening, planting, that kind of thing. That was right up my alley. So it's not like I was a super, super lazy kid. I wouldn't consider myself like when I started getting bigger or like gaining the weight until I would say like fourth to fifth grade. I feel like was kind of a pinnacle for my weight. That's kind of when I went from being just like, oh, you know, she's got a little baby fat to like, oh, honey, that's a little more than baby fat. Okay. Okay. And that's kind of when that transition started for me. And there are a couple like things that I wanted to highlight about this. Ever since I was a kid, I had been having like weird medical things happen. We didn't have like, we had insurance, but it wasn't like the best insurance, because back then like you either had top of the line insurance where everything was paid for, or you had like mid grade where not much was paid for. And so we had insurance, and I went to the doctor, and because we started going to the doctor right after I had started gaining weight, the doctors looked at me and said, oh, honey, you're just a fat little kid. Like, you just need to lose weight. All your problems are because you need to lose weight. Now, a couple problems with this. One, and I have a blog channel called crookedteethhappen.com, and that's where I've like been blogging throughout the last couple of years. There's not too much content on it right now because I actually lost all the content previously, because my previous website host was a dick, but that's irrelevant. On there's a story, and I believe it's titled something like "You're Off the Charts." And one of my very first doctors actually told me, she brought in a chart and she held it up, you know, just like this. She held it up and she goes, do you see this chart? You don't have the numbers and how the kid was supposed to be like a diagonal line and all this stuff. And she's like, this, for your age and your height, like this is what you should weigh. You're all the way over here. Like, I had to draw lines in for you. And I was like, okay. Like, to me, it was just, then draw your lines. Like, I don't understand what the problem is. Because I was a kid. You know, I was only like 10 when she told me this. And my mom took this very seriously, because they took my mom aside and they were like, look, your daughter is fat and you need to fix it. So my mom, being like the good noodle that she was, went ahead and tried to help me. Like, my whole emphasis from that point on in my young life was all focused and centered around losing weight, like always. I had been previous, like before I was, I think 15, I had done Weight Watchers 4 or 5 times, gaining and losing. At one point I had gotten to basically what I would consider my goal weight. I think technically I was like 4 pounds away. But then I went off of it, and that was that. I would say when we did this, and I know that there's a lot of people that are going to really want to hate on like my mom or my family for this, but it wasn't like, I wasn't coming home every day and being told like, Paige, you're a cow, Paige, you're a hippo, Paige, you know, get on that treadmill, fatty. It wasn't like that. It was that there was just such an emphasis on needing to lose weight, because the doctor had told my mom how important it was that I lose weight. Not that I get fit, not that I exercise, not that I become healthy, but that I lose weight and be skinny. There was never an emphasis on any kind of never an emphasis on any other form of like stability or health. It was always just losing weight. And like magically, all of my problems were going to go away if I somehow lost the weight. Well, my mom, like I said before, my mom was very supportive, and she did everything that she could think of to help me lose weight, you know, Weight Watchers and this and that. And it got to the point where I remember being in 8th grade, and our weigh-ins, which is what they're called on Weight Watchers, is you go and you weigh in and you see your progress. Well, it was every Tuesday at like 10:30 or whatever, I would get picked up from school. I remember getting asked by the office assistants and by like by my teachers, my friends, like, Paige, where do you go every week? Like, what are you doing? And I remember I was so embarrassed. I usually just walked away. Like, I couldn't even answer it. And I didn't know, like, no one had told me, you don't have to be ashamed. You don't have to do this or that, because I had almost been conditioned to be ashamed because it needed to be gone. You need to get the weight gone. It needs to, you know, not from my family, but from my doctors. And it made me feel so like what I was doing was wrong. Like, just me existing was wrong, if that makes sense. I hope that I'm like conveying the emotion side of this correctly. I'm not always the best at the emotional side of things. I digress. I was lying to the people around me, and I started lying about it when I was a kid. Like, we're talking 6th grade. I was lying about where I was going, what I was doing, why I was eating certain foods. Like, my friends noticed that my lunches changed. Like, I went from having, you know, whatever was in my bag to there were portion sizes of Pringles, or, you know, Diet Pringles or whatever there was at the time. And I had a sandwich that was portioned, and I had all of these portioned meals. And I went from having a whatever lunch to a sandwich, and actually like a very, very structured meal, a little smaller than it used to be, you know, because it was being counted for my points for Weight Watchers. And my friends, I remember one time I confided in one friend, and I told them that I was on a diet. And they said, well, why are you on a diet? And I said, because the doctor said I need to lose weight. Well, this friend, and again, this is 6th grade, so like you stole my rubber ducky kind of shit is what we're talking about. But this friend in turn turned around and told the entire table that I was on a diet. And the entire table turned and looked at me, and I laughed it off because early on I learned that you had to be like, you know, the funny fat girl. But I remember in that moment, like everyone turned to me and looked at me, and it just reaffirmed the fact that being on a diet and watching my calories, like it meant something bad. And I felt like that whole situation, it constantly was reoccurring in like my young life. Not at home. Like at home, it was normal. You know, everyone knew it until one day. And I know my story's going to kind of jump a little all over the place, but they all intertwine so weirdly that it's like, I can't just go from age to age to age to age. Like it has to have a little bit of a weird flow, so just bear with me. So one day, not too long after that incident actually, I had some family that was in town, and it had just been my birthday, and they were like, oh, well, we're bringing you a special present. And I was like, oh my God, you know, I think I was 12 or 13. I was super excited about it, and their present to me, and keeping in mind, again, like they honestly thought that they were doing the right thing or that they were helping me. Their present to me was a bag full of diet food, like diet munchy food, like things that were special, you know, like I didn't grow up in a house where like if you wanted it, you could just go to the store and get it. Like for me, getting fresh fruit was a treat. Like it was special. For me, getting like extra chips and stuff like that, that was extra. So I can see how like in their mind that was them being really nice. But they came up to me and they gave me like a couple bags full of like the Lay's. They weren't baked potato chips, but they were like the diet version of whatever it was at the time. They were my favorite ones. And they came up to me and they were like, well, your mom said you were on a diet the last time we talked, and that you had been, you know, doing really well. And I was like, well, yeah, I have been. Well, then she hands me these chips and she said, here, this is so you keep doing well. And I remembered thinking like, even my birthday centers around this. Like even my birthday, even the things in my life that should just be fun don't get to be fun anymore. Everything needs to center around losing weight. Okay, Paige, remember that. Everything needs to center around losing weight. Repeat. Everything, like, and it was like that. I felt like in my life for I'd say a solid 2 to 3 years, the people in my life, they were really legitimately trying to help me, but in the end, all it ended up doing was creating almost like an obsession, which is, you know, as you grow into adulthood, what it becomes. You know, the more contrived your brain and more fixated your brain becomes on it, the more you end up fixated on it, you know, even as an adult. And so, you know, fast forward a little bit, I never really understood why I had been at Weight Watchers all of these different times. And I think part of it was because, again, you know, the doctor, and I'm not blaming this on like the doctor or one family member or anything like that. It's nothing like I'm blaming anybody, just to put that out there. But I never succeeded at Weight Watchers as a kid because I never understood really like why I was there. Like it was never Paige, you know, you want to be healthy so that way, you know, you can do this and you can do that and health and long term, and none of that was ever explained. The doctor was always just like, look, you're fat, you got to get gone with the weight. So I would get gone with the weight. I would go on Weight Watchers. I would lose 20, 30, 40, 50 pounds, whatever I had to lose. And then I'd gain it back because I never had that like understanding of why I was there, what I was doing. It was never really graspable for me. A, because I was so young, and B, because it had just never really been explained. And I think that my mom was always trying so hard to tread that ground between like really trying to do what the doctor is like telling her she needs to do, and like telling my mom that it is dire important that she do this. And she always wanted to, you know, straddle that with like, this is my daughter, and I don't want my daughter to feel like I don't love her. I don't want my daughter to feel like her whole life has to be her weight. And I feel like for as much as she knew to do at that time in, you know, in the mid 90s, I think that she did all that she knew to do, because back then, what we know today and what we knew then, obviously, hindsight's always 2020. So I'd kind of like to go in next, the little fashion side of this, I think. On the fashion side, I think that my dog is snoring so loud. She's like this big and she just snored like a man. Anyways, my fashion and like how I dressed, I never stopped and thought about it back then, but it was such a reflection of how I felt in that moment. And you're going to understand, you know, as I get into this. When I was like elementary school, which for where I live is like 1 through 4, like grades, you know, well, K through 4, but mainly for me, it started, like I said, around like fourth and 5th grade. I started wearing oversized shirts. Now, part of that was just because they were comfortable and like I was comfortable. And at that age, you don't really think about like, I'm gonna wear this skin tight halter top because I look damn good. You think like, oh, I want to be comfortable. So that way when I'm playing on recess, I don't got to worry about life. And that, you know, for the most part, that was why. But as my career in school progressed, my fashion changed a lot. I ended up progressing into a time where I wore really big pants. And I'm not talking just like I was fat so my pants were big. I'm talking like big ass pants, like pants that were 2 sizes too big for me pants. And I ended up wearing these in combination with an oversized t-shirt and a hoodie, a giant hoodie. Why a giant hoodie? Why giant clothes? Because in my mind, I would see thinner people wear big hoodies and big clothing and they looked good in it. They looked small. The hoodie emphasized how small they were. And I think in my mind, I rationalized it as, oh, well, Paige, if you wear bigger clothes, the same thing will work for you. The bigger the hoodie, the smaller you look, you know. If I go stand by an elephant, damn, am I gonna look small? You know, that kind of concept. And I feel like at a young age, I realized that. I say that as I wear a hoodie now. That's really funny. P.S. I'm only wearing, like, it's my new Adidas hoodie and I'm obsessed. I'm in love. I'm, just for the record, it's not like I'm so insecure. I just love hoodies. But we're moving back to what I was talking about. Bunny trail. I think what it was is I had such an intense need to feel enveloped, to feel like I was covered and to almost shrink myself away. Because by the time, you know, now we're hitting like, I'd say 6th, 7th grade, and I was really into this, you know, big oversized clothing. And for me, like I remember it like I'm still experiencing it. We had computer lab and I would go to computer lab and this is almost embarrassing. I would sit there and it would get so blessed hot. I mean, think about it. There's like 40 computers in computer lab and there's 40, you know, little tiny sweaty bodies in there. And there was like a window that you couldn't even open because it's a school. And like, it was just so hot in there all the time. And I remember I would be dripping sweat and I refused to take my hoodie off because at this time, I had developed a sense of fat and where it was on my body and how not only did I want to be, you know, covered and hidden and just tucked away from everything, but I also realized that I carried weight on my back, that I had back fat. And I didn't know what it was. I didn't know that it was, you know, normal if you gained weight to gain it in different places. I didn't know any of that. So for me, when I saw these random like lumps on my back that other girls didn't have, I just thought, I'll cover them up. That's what I do with the rest of my body. That's brilliant. I'll cover them up. And so I did. And I remember there was one day I was actually dizzy. I was so hot in that class. And I remember I put my hand like up, you know, just to like steady it for a second. And the teacher came over and he's like, are you sleeping? Like, what the hell's going on with you, Paige? And I was like, no, I'm hot. And he goes, well, it's hot in here. Take your hoodie off. And a kid next to me was like, she won't take her hoodie off. And I looked over like, why are you talking? And this teacher looked at me and they were like, is that true? What, you won't take your hoodie off? And I was like, no, it's not that I won't take my hoodie off. I don't need to. Like, I'm just warm, but I'll be fine. And I tried to like brush it off and like, you know, scoot it away. But in the back of his, like, he kept staring at me like, why is this girl crazy? Why is she not taking her jacket off? Which, when you're in middle school, what does that look like? It looks like you're trying to hide something. So what did I do? I went ahead and I scuffed up, you know, I pulled up my things so that way you could see that like there wasn't anything on my arms. Cause I remember thinking like, oh my God, this is getting blown so far out of proportion. Like, and it was ridiculous because everything I was doing was designed to hide something. But it wasn't like a scar or a scratch or me being abused. It was like I was trying to hide me. But in an effort to do so, I was almost incriminating my family or anybody around me because I was so desperate to, like, I was just clinging to my clothing. And I remember at the end of that day, I left there, I went to the restroom, and I took my hoodie off because I was safe inside a stall. You know, no one could see me, of course, God forbid the world see me. And I took my hoodie off inside that stall, hung it up, and I just stood there and I put my wrists like up against the wall because it was cold, like in the stall. I put my wrists up against the thing and I just sat there, and I had tears in my eyes because I was so upset, because I was so flustered. I couldn't put into words and like tell this teacher, you know, no, I don't want to because I'm fat and I don't want people to see my body, because even I didn't know that at that time. And I think that was such a turning like point in my memory for when I remember really feeling aware of my body and being aware that it was so wrong, quote unquote. So after this hoodie phase, I ended up getting caught in the wind pant phase, which, oh joy, was that a good one. Boy, did I look sexy. Those of you that don't know what wind pants are, you didn't live through the painful time that I did. Wind pants are like jogging pants of the late 90s, well, mid to late 90s, early 2000s even. I definitely, let me put it this way, I wore this trend out. I had matching top and bottom. The wind pants where when you walk, it goes whoosh, 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 whoosh. Oh, this time in my life was painful. But yet again, why did I pick these? Like, okay, were they partially on trend for part of the time I wore them? Yes. Now, they were also big, bulky. They were designed to be big and bulky, which me, in my mind, I'm like, big and bulky. I'm big and bulky. They're big and bulky. We'll hide my big and bulky and we will be good. Big and bulky, big and bulky. How many times can I say big and bulky? Now, I also, I remember that time in my life, and I remember every time I got dressed into these, it was like suiting up to go to war. Like, okay, oh yeah, ooh, got on the windsuit today. Oh, I'm gonna go run me a trek. Who we kidding? I'm gonna try to hide from the world and blend in with any wind pants surrounding I can find. That was also, and that was me like phasing out of middle school, and like I don't think that phase ever made it to high school. I hope it didn't. I don't honestly remember, but I do know that it was on and off throughout my entire middle school career, but definitely prevalent, like right in there. And I just, the wind pants. Again, everything that I wore at this time was designed in my mind to conceal. It was designed to hide what I was and who I was. And is it like overly pivotal? No, but it's something that I wanted to throw in here nonetheless because it needs to be talked about, you know? You know. Okay, guys, now it's time for story time. This is going to be kind of, I don't know if it'll be in every video, but I feel like each one of these segments is going to have a story in it that would be relatively significant to what I'm talking about. So today's story time is actually going to be about my grandma and something that she said to me one time that has stuck with me my entire life. When I was younger, my grandpa, which is her husband, had to have several like back and shoulder surgeries that were very extensive. And it was recommended to him by the physical therapist to get a hot tub. Anyways, moving on, fast forwarding to my conversation. I think I was like 12 or 13 when we had this talk. Remember how I said my story was going to go back a little bit? Story time, girl. Story time. So we were sitting out in the hot tub. It was at night, obviously. I mean, it was probably like 8, 9 o'clock at night. We're looking up at the stars. It was beautiful. And it was just so calming. And my grandma looked at me and started to tell me things, and I remember like in that moment how I had almost not been listening at first, and I made myself be present because what she was saying was just, it's so impactful even for a 12-year-old. She looked at me and said something along the lines of, you know, Paige, being fat's not the worst thing. And pause right there. If you knew, like, my grandma was one of the most like supportive, yes, Paige, you need to lose weight. She cooked me diet food. She showed me how to cook diet food. She was one of the most like encouraging. Sometimes the encouragement like went a little beyond what I would say now as an adult was appropriate. Having me like lap around the house and that kind of thing. She was never mean about it. Not like, drop down and give me 20, you little maggot. Nothing like that. Like, grandma was always nice. But I definitely feel like sometimes it went a little bit maybe beyond where it needed to go. But anyways, for her to say, like, you know, being fat isn't the worst thing, I remember being like, this is something I need to listen to. So Grandma and I are sitting there and she says this and I'm like, it's not, Grandma? Like, in my life, it seems like a pretty big deal because everybody seems to be on my ass about it, okay? Okay. And she was like, no, Paige, it's not. Because think about it. There are people that are born without their eyesight. There are people that are born and can't walk. Some people are born with, you know, diabetes that they can't control. Some people are born with, like, you know, limbs missing. And she went on and on and on. And she goes, what I'm trying to tell you, Paige, is that you were blessed by being fat. And again, I'm like, what the hell are you? And what'd you do with my grandma? Like, this ain't my grandma talking. And she continued with, at least your problem is something that you can change. At least you have control over it. You know, these other people, they would give anything to be able to change their eyesight and make it, you know, make them so they have eyesight. Or the people that are born and can't walk, what would they give to be able to walk, Paige? At least what's wrong with you is something you can fix, something you have control over. You were given the innate ability and blessing to be able to control your situation. And your weight is something that you will always struggle with, I'm sure. And it's something you've struggled with even just in your first couple years of life now. And it's something that I'm sorry you deal with, but at the same time, I want you to realize, like, it's not the end of the world. And after she said it, I nodded my head, you know, politely, and I was like, oh, I know, Grandma, you know, and I did my little polite, like, you know, 12, 13-year-old Paige nod, and we went on with our night and went in and played games and whatever. And I remember thinking, like, in that moment, holy crap, I thought about what she said every day for, like, the next month. And even as an adult, I think about what she said that night all the time. And, you know, as an adult, too, I realized, like, problem, like, what she was getting at and the way that she put it to me in a way that a young kid would understand. As an adult, do I realize that, like, you know, people who are born with other disabilities and things, are they inept? No, and that's not what she meant, obviously. She was trying to put it to me in a way that I could understand it. And as an adult, I realized that, like, my weight doesn't make me or my situation a problem. She was trying to convey and teach me that, you know, Paige, like, your problems aren't real problems. Like, you have control over your life. And as an adult, I have taken that with me and I have let it, I don't want to say dictate, but every time someone talks to me about, like, my weight or like medical stuff, I'm always someone else has it worse. Like, there's always a worse scenario out there than mine. So, like, while I appreciate, you know, you telling me, like, that I'm brave or strong or whatever, in my mind, I'm just going, no, someone else is. Someone else is. I'm just able to talk about it. I just have a medium to talk about it, or I just am open enough to be willing to say it. You know, some people aren't that open. Some people are private. I'm actually a very, very private person. Most of the things that I have said on YouTube so far, I wouldn't say to people that are close to me. The only reason I started doing this is because I feel like I have the personality, I have the outlet, and I have the ability to linguistically explain it. So I feel like it would be a slap in the face to all those people that maybe can't express it the way that they need a voice. And I feel like it would be wrong to not be that voice if I'm able to. I think everything that my grandma did back then, all of the, you know, the diet food and the emphasis on my point system for Weight Watchers and the emphasis on my weight and, oh, Paige, you look really good, you know, keep it up. And I honestly don't think any of that was ever malicious. I think that my grandma, you know, you have to keep in mind, when you say grandma, she's obviously older. And older people, like when she was from, it was a different time period. Back when she grew up, being overweight wasn't just like, oh, you're overweight. It was like, you're hideous. Like, you weren't allowed in the, you know, what is it, mid-60s, 60s to 70s or whatever. You could not have weight on you. Like, what are you thinking? Why do you have weight? Like, your skin tight pants should fit you perfectly. And I think that it was somewhat generational as to why she felt the way she did. She felt so strongly about weight, why there was such an emphasis about weight. And I honestly think that she went from being thin, she had 2 children, she became overweight, not like, you know, grotesquely overweight or anything like that, but she gained weight. And I think that as an older woman, she was looking at me, seeing me head down a path of overweight. And she's like, I don't want you to be like this. You know, she's the one that taught me the slogan, the nothing tastes as good as thin feels. That was, my grandma taught me that. And she used to tell me, like, Paige, you don't understand what it's like to be able to just walk freely and never be out of breath, to run and be able to run and play sports and to do these things. And I want you to have those in your life. And I think that all of the talks that we had and all of the emphasis on my weight that she put, I think it was all there for the right reasons. And I would hate for people like the internet to take it and just run with it and be like, your whole family fat shamed you from the time you were a kid. Like, they didn't. They did what they honestly thought was best for me. They did what they were told to do by the doctors. They did the best they could with what they knew. And I honestly believe that. There were things, I think that, like I said 100 times in this video, I think there were things that my mom or grandma or family in general did that might have been a little overkill, but they didn't know that. You know, it isn't like my family would ever come after me and just like be a dick to be to be like that. I honestly think that they did the best that they knew to do. They knew that they needed to listen to the doctor. The doctor said I needed to lose weight, so I needed to lose weight, and it was just that simple. I think that growing up, now I can see that. Sometimes when I was younger, I used to get really, really frustrated. Like, I hated myself because I felt like every facet of me had to be about my weight. And I didn't have, like, it wasn't a thing where Paige was beautiful, Paige was this, Paige was smart. It was always Paige was fat, or Paige needs to lose weight, or Paige lost 10 pounds, or wow, Paige hit, her goal weight for the month, or this or this. There was never anything about Paige that was defined by anything other than my weight. And I think times like that were when it was the most frustrating growing up, but times like that were the most frustrating. So, and I'd also like to say, like, the irony of what my grandma said that night is not lost on me. I always thought it was interesting, like, as I grew up, that, she said that, and then I ended up going on to have, like, several medical issues, and some of them, ironically enough, actually caused onset weight gain and hormonal imbalances and things like that. And I just thought it was so interesting that as I grew up, like, everything that she said was very true, and at the same time, it's like, I've got both sides of that going, Grandma. I got them both covered. Like, can I try to lose weight? Sure. Is my body gonna let me? I don't know. Now, what did I learn from this experience and, like, everything that I've told you so far as an adult? Well, I would say that the first thing I've said it 100 times, what she taught me that night, looking up under the stars, I will never forget. That there's always something worse. And that's probably the first thing that I would say to anybody watching this, is that I know how hard it is sometimes to, like, pick your damn self up off the floor and not feel like crap about yourself, no matter what it is. Like, even if you feel like your grades aren't good enough in school, or you feel like you are too heavy, or, you feel like no one loves you, or no matter what it is that, like, is ailing you, someone always has it worse. And I don't know if that'll help everyone, but it helped me. Not being like, oh, that brother over there, they got it. It was never like that. It was more of a, Paige, why are you bitching? Did you wake up this morning? Can you still walk? Shut up. Are you breathing? Okay, cool. Because that's more than some people had last night. Like, stop. You don't get to bitch. Because someone always has it worse. And I don't say this to people like, you need to get over it because someone has it worse than you, because that's not it. I just say that because that's one of the biggest things I learned. And I feel like I learned it at such an important age, because from then on, my whole life changed. And that will be the next video. Itchy nose. That'll be the next video of, like, high school, and where, like, my medical problems really started to take off, and my weight and all of that. It'll be in the next video. But I really wanted to showcase that, how important that was for me to learn, and has been as an adult for me to learn and remember and showcase that idea. The other thing that I really, really learned from this is things that were said and done, and the emphasis in my life. I have nieces and nephews, and one of them she's my daughter. Like, I don't even hardly call her my niece, because we have such a connection. And from the time she was little, I remember looking at her as a baby and looking at her and knowing in that moment she was the most perfect thing I had ever laid eyes on. And that in my world, nothing and no one would ever make her feel like she was less. No one would ever look at my beautiful little girl and tell her, I don't care if she's 30 pounds or 400 pounds, no one is going to look at her like she's anything less than a beautiful, intelligent little girl, because she's not. And I didn't care in that moment if she was healthy, unhealthy, if she was big, small, tall, short, if she had big boobs and a big butt, tiny butt, flat butt, gray hair. I don't care. That was not supposed to rhyme, but it did. In that moment, I didn't care, because the one thing I learned is that my emphasis for my entire life had been about my weight and what I looked like and what I ate. And I was never going to do that to her. I want her life to be more than that. And now that I'm older, I have more nieces and more nephews, and none of their lives will have that emphasis, at least not from me. None of their lives will be just nitpicked in the sense of by doctors or anything, being told that your life is governed by what you look like, not your health, by what you look like. That's where I have a problem. It's okay to let the health aspect really kind of rule. I don't want to say rule, but to let that kind of overtake your life. I understand that wholeheartedly, but it will never rule as you are fat. You need to watch what you eat. And that's what I have been told my whole life by doctors. And I will never, ever let that be the reoccurring theme in their lives, ever. That's what I would say to mothers or anybody with children in their lives that they really impress upon. If they have a weight issue, impress health, and make sure it's not just physical health. Like this is okay. That's one aspect of health. I've said it 100 times. This is only one aspect. What about mental and emotional, spiritual? Like what about these other things that, like, you have to be conscious of so many other healths. You can't just look at one and be like, oh, she's skinny, she's healthy. What if she's skinny because she's an anorexic? She's not healthy. Like, it's just, you can't look at it that way. And that's one of the biggest things I learned. The last big thing that I really learned, and this will be a reoccurring theme in all of these videos, is that sometimes doctors need to be punched right in their pie hole. Say that not literally, don't do it, because that's wrong. Maybe I should censor myself. You can't take everything a doctor says verbatim, literally. My family did, because at that point in time in life, they didn't know any better. No one was told emphasis on any other things. They did what they were told because that's what they thought they were supposed to do. When I was a kid, doctors, like, what they said was law. That was it. Nowadays, it's not so much like that. Nowadays, you're told things, you can get a second opinion, you can do this and that. When I was a kid, that wasn't so much the case. That doctor that I had looked at me skin deep. They looked at me right in front of them. I was a fat kid. Okay, cool. She's a fat kid. Got it. You need to lose weight, fat kid. That's your problem. They never checked my blood. They never checked anything on me. If they had checked my blood when I was 13, which is right when I started really, really having weight issues, they would have found high levels of prolactin in my blood. They would have treated me for an onset pituitary tumor that would cause multiple medical problems down the road. But because I had a doctor that could look at me and not see anything more than skin deep, that went untreated, unlooked at, undiagnosed. Every time we went back and things didn't get better, it was because I was fat. I'd been dieting and not losing weight, but it's because I was fat. Clearly this fat kid is sneaking food. Clearly this fat kid is doing fat kid things, whatever fat kid things are. It was never anything more than skin deep. And if there's one thing I've learned, it's that if you have a doctor that looks at you and they only see one aspect of you, you need a different damn doctor. Because no doctor should ever look at their patient, no matter if they are 12 or 13 or 73. No doctor should ever look at you and see one facet of you. A doctor, it's hard to be a doctor right now in America. I'm not going to lie. It's hard. And I totally understand how it can be overwhelming. But as the patient, you have to advocate for yourself. And I say this to you because no one said it for me, because we didn't know to. There are more facets than you can possibly imagine to your body. Do not let someone tell you that your problems run skin deep, because you don't run skin deep. I don't run skin deep, and I didn't run skin deep then either. I don't hold any grudges against this doctor. I think that they said what they thought they needed to say. But they were not thorough, because all they saw was a fat kid, just like everyone else always just saw the fat kid. Okay, guys, that kind of wraps up the Fat Kid Chronicles for today. like I said before, this is something that I will be doing more and more frequently. I have a lot of this kind of stuff. I know this first video was kind of long. I could have broken it up, but I didn't want it to like not be together because it needs to be together. Very led to make a video or make videos about this, like overweight and that aspect of my life, as well as the medical side. I feel very led to do this. I feel like it's something that needs to be said, and something that I am all about, something that I'm at a place in my life where I'm no longer private about it. So why not? Like, comment, subscribe, all that stuff, so I know you're watching. And I will talk to you guys all later. Yeah, that's all, guys. Take care. Bye.